My name is Cormac Vale. I am 69, a widower, an old bookbinder by trade who still oils his hands on Sunday mornings because hide glue never truly leaves the skin. I live in a narrow townhouse off Commonwealth Avenue, the kind with a brass mail slot and a door that argues in winter. Tonight I am standing under chandeliers the color of warm gin at a boutique hotel in Back Bay, watching my only child Rhea pose beside a pale cake and a colder man. I keep my spine straight. I have learned that silence properly used is heavier than a shout. She lifts a crystal flute. The room hushes with her. "Dad," she says, smiling for the photographer. "Consider this our fresh start. The townhouse, your townhouse, will look better with our name on the deed." She taps her glass to Kellen's. "We already lined up a valuation at $2.7 million. You will sign the papers after dessert." My fingers find the red string around a thick envelope in my jacket. It is stiff not from sentiment but from seals and tabs and the kind of paper that lives in courthouse drawers. I slide the envelope deeper. I let her words sit on the linen like a wet ring from a careless glass. People cheer because people love a performance. The band swells. Someone shouts for a kiss. The planner waves at servers to bring out the tiny lamb chops on silver sticks. I glance toward the head table. A leather folder rests near the place cards, black-zipped, practical. I recognize my own initials heat-pressed on the corner. An old habit, mark what you intend to keep. Rhea leans in and adds softer for me alone. "Try to look happy. You will be taken care of." She holds the smile. The camera clicks. I nod once. I perfected the nod last winter during rehab when strangers kept saying how lucky I was to be alive. Luck is a noisy word. I prefer records. Before I go further, do me a favor. Tell me where you are watching from. Tap subscribe so this old man's voice reaches someone who needs a map through family storms. We are going to talk about blood money and the small doors people think you will not lock. Back to the room. The hotel smells like polished banisters and orange peel. I accept coffee I do not want. On the saucer sits a small brass key that does not belong here. I know it at a glance, notched short, cheap. Not my Yale, not my century-old latch. Someone fancied a copy. Later, I will tell you how I found the original missing from the dish by the hallway mirror. For now, I lay the key beside my cup as if it were a lemon seed. The master of ceremonies invites toasts. Kellen stands buttoning a jacket that is one size too slim for his ambition. "To family," he says, "and to new chapters." He does not look at me when he says it. His phone blinks on the white tablecloth. The lock screen shows a bank notification he forgets to hide. A polite rectangle of light. I catch a phrase, and a number, an afternoon transfer I did not authorize. I will explain in a moment. People see what the camera wants. I prefer corners. In the corner by the terrace doors, the wedding planner argues in a whisper with a hotel manager. The manager points toward the ballroom office. The office door is cracked. A printer hums. A stack of contracts waits with yellow flags. I rest my hand in my pocket on the envelope again. The notary's stamp is cold as a coin through the paper. "Cormac," a cousin breathes. "She looks beautiful." She does. Rhea is all hardwood shine. She inherited my attention to edges, but not my affection for earned weight. The speeches climb a little higher. They tell stories about her science fair medals and the way she could charm librarians into waiving late fees. Nobody mentions the winter the pipes burst, and she chose a ski trip over a plumber. Families curate their museum walls. The archives tell another story. I step aside to let a photographer pass. His lens snags the light like a fishhook. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I see the city doing what cities do, pretending the night is new. A rideshare idles under the awning. A bellman nudges a cart of champagne into the freight elevator. Inside my jacket, that envelope purrs like a small engine-steady patient. You should know some facts about me. I keep receipts in chronological order. I label chords. I do not rush. When the stroke came mild, they said a polite brush of the hand rather than a fist. I learned something useful. People talk a different way around. A man who moves slowly. They narrate while they take. They assume paper will not argue. I return to the table in time to hear Rhea's matron of honor deliver a joke about fathers who cannot let go. It lands. Laughter climbs like ivy. I let it climb. My coffee cools. The brass key winks up at me, smug as a coin on a sidewalk. I set an index finger on it steady. I imagine it in my hallway lock, the clumsy twist, the impatient shove. I imagine the scrape of a drawer in my study, the bottom left where I keep deeds and a few photographs that were kinder before they were framed. "Dad," Rhea says again, this time without the microphone. After the cake, we are stepping into the office. It will be quick. Kellen organized everything. You only have to sign. Is that so, I say. Of course, Kellen says. It is efficient. We even covered the recording fees. You will not feel a thing. It is sweet of you to worry about my nerves, I tell him. Paper has never frightened me. Paper remembers. He laughs a little. He thinks I am joking. That is the way of men who see age as a finish line rather than a vantage point. A violinist drags us toward the cake. The knife handles are mother of pearl, more decorative than honest. Rhea feeds Kellen a ribbon of frosting. He smears a dot on her nose. The room claps. I excuse myself for a minute and drift toward the terrace where the air still smells like the river. On the low table by the door sits another folder brown craft tied with cotton tape. Someone left it there carelessly. Someone assumed the old man would not notice. I notice the hotel's crest on the letterhead inside. I notice a number large and round set aside as an advance for tonight's spectacle. I close the folder. I replace the tape exactly as I found it. This is where people expect a scene. They want the slam, the shout, the old man's throat gone raw in a room that rented its grace by the hour. They will be disappointed. I will not give them the music they rehearsed. I learned from binding rare books that a bad repair does more harm than a slow hand. Tonight is conservation, not performance. Back at my seat, a server refills my water. The brass key is gone. Only a faint ring remains on the cloth where it lay. I look left, right. No fuss, no chase. I pocket the absence with the same care as the envelope. Silence properly used is not emptiness. It is a hold. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies cries, in 10 minutes we sign keepsakes for the happy couple in the ballroom office. He winks at me. It is meant as a kindness. I return the look the way a stone returns a wave. You have heard enough for the first minute of this story. You have the image, the glass, the envelope, the folder, the key. You have the insult dressed as a toast. You have my promise that paper will speak. Stay with me. What happens next will not be loud, but it will be final. Tell me where you are watching from. Tap subscribe if you believe in quiet repairs done right. Families and money make a messy book. I will show you how to stitch a broken spine without losing a single page. I will explain the transfer I saw on Kellen's phone, the message that blinked in the family chat while they sliced the cake, and why the notary's stamp in my pocket felt heavier than the groom's ring, but not yet. This part matters. I promised you I would explain the transfer I saw glowing on Kellen's phone that night. It was not large enough to scream fraud to the average guest. It was subtle, a wire for $32,000 time-stamped hours before the ceremony. To most eyes, it could have been a payment for flowers or catering. But I knew the florist's invoice by heart. $17,800 for hydrangeas, roses, and those tall glass cylinders the planner insisted on. That bill had already been paid from the couple's account. So where had this transfer gone, and why was it hidden in a folder labeled escrow draft? Families rarely attack in daylight. They do it under chandeliers when the music covers the shuffle of hands. I sat through toast after toast, hands folded on a linen napkin, watching the people who bore my name talk as if I were a sponsor, not blood. They smiled at me like I was a guest with a deep pocket. Nobody asked how I was feeling after the stroke. Nobody asked whether I had finished my therapy. They asked when I planned to release the Townhouse release, like a dove you clap into the air at a ceremony. That townhouse is not a dove. It is red brick, 3 stories, narrow staircases that complain if you do not treat them gently. It is where I spent 4 decades mending spines of books while my wife, God rest her, poured coffee and hummed in the kitchen. It is the place where Rhea learned to balance on one leg while brushing her teeth, and later to balance numbers while filling out college aid forms. To her it seems now like a portfolio line. To me, it is marrow. I poured water and listened. Rhea's friends laughed too loudly at Kellen's jokes, the kind of laugh that comes from borrowed money. At the far table, my cousin leaned toward his wife, whispering. He nodded at me then at the planner, then back at me again. Everyone in that room seemed to know a version of the story except the one I carried. In the group chat, our family's pride and shame messages buzzed all week leading up to this event. I saved screenshots. I have them still, Rhea wrote. By Sunday, the townhouse is ours. Dad will be too tired to argue. Paper's ready, a cousin replied with clapping emojis as if property were a party trick. Nobody wrote back. Is he ready? Nobody wrote. Is it fair? Silence in those small gray bubbles is its own kind of sentence. The quiet pressure did not stop at texts. A knock at my door 2 nights before the wedding revealed a small envelope under the mat, inside a printed HOA fine. Apparently someone had held a pre-party at the townhouse without my permission. Music too loud, bottles tossed into the recycling bin before dawn. The fine was small, $300, but the message was larger. They already acted as if it were theirs to occupy. I did not argue. I placed the fine with the others in a drawer where I keep things that prove themselves over time. My wife used to say paper builds a spine. She was right. A fine, a receipt, a transcript alone, they whisper. Together they roar. On the morning of the ceremony, a different paper arrived. This one not in an envelope but on my phone, a bank alert. A wire moving out flagged for unusual behavior. $32,000 gone to a shell account in Kellen's name. The note field read escrow extension. I touched the alert once, then let it sit. I knew better than to call immediately. If you show panic, they see opportunity. Instead, I pressed the phone to the table screen down and carried on with my coffee. Later, you will see why that silence mattered. I want you to understand how pressure feels when it comes from inside your own bloodline. It is not a push. It is a hand on your back at church guiding you toward an altar you did not choose. Everyone around you believes you are walking willingly. They clap, they smile, they say amen. Only you know that the hand is firm, that the steps are not your own. At the wedding dinner, that hand was everywhere. Ria's new in-laws complimented me on the transfer of assets as if I had already signed. A neighbor asked how I would spend my retirement once the burden of the townhouse was lifted. I nodded polite, holding the envelope inside my jacket like a relic. They saw a tired man softened by age. They did not see the codicil sealed inside, waiting for the right eyes to witness. Let me tell you something about patience. It is not weakness. It is weight distributed evenly until the bridge holds. I smiled. I tipped the valet $3 with a hand that did not shake, though my bones wanted to. I let them think they guided me. All the while I held the evidence, ring camera clips of Kellen rifling drawers, bank alerts flagged, OA fines stamped, group chat screenshots saved to a drive they did not know existed. The band played louder. The planner lit candles. My daughter toasted her new life, her new control, her new deed. I applauded once the way one claps at a school recital. Quiet, steady. Inside my chest was stone. But what they did not know was this power does not live in toasts. It lives in records, and my records were ready. You already know what I carried that night. The envelope with the notary's seal. The bank alert showing money sliding out like a bead of water on marble. The HOA fine, small but sharp like a tack on a chair. Each one was a thread. A loan easy to miss. Together a rope. Now let me tell you the part I never said aloud until now. I had prepared for this long before the wedding invitations were printed. A year earlier, when my doctor signed off that my stroke was mild, my lawyer, Mr. Pike, sat with me at the long oak table in his office. "Cormac," he said, "if you want to protect what's yours, you need more than a will. You need a structure." That's when we set up the LLC Vale Holdings, where I kept 51% control. The townhouse was no longer mine as a man, it was mine as an entity. That control meant nobody, not even Ria with a shiny quitclaim deed, could push me out without my signature. I also drafted a conditional power of attorney. It would only activate with 2 doctors' letters confirming I could no longer manage my affairs. Until then, every paper she touched was dust. She thought my illness gave her a key. She did not read the fine print. Paper remembers, always. So yes, I had a plan. A codicil too, tucked inside that envelope, notarized 2 weeks before the wedding. It rerouted everything, the townhouse, the accounts, the art I collected back when I still had steady hands. All into a trust for my grandchildren. A trustee who is not family, but steady, boring, incorruptible. Ria was still my daughter, but her inheritance was paused. Paper makes no apologies. But you need to understand, plans are nothing without patience. I did not slam these papers down at the first insult. I let them underestimate me. That is a strange gift of age. People see gray hair and hear slower steps, and they think you are already fading. What they do not see is how much sharper silence grows when you practice it daily. That night, while the guests laughed and clinked glasses, I sat still. I let Kellen wave his hands about escrow, about valuations, about market timing. He thought he was teaching me business. I bound books for 40 years. I know what ink means when it meets a page. I know what margins hide. He spoke, I nodded. Inside, I was already stacking their words with my papers, building a spine too heavy for them to carry. Mini-shock came just before dessert. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message slipped through the family group chat by mistake. Ria wrote to Kellen. "By midnight, it's ours. Dad's too tired. Clerk search done, no obstacles." And she attached a screenshot of the county clerk's website showing a lien attempt filed under Vale Holdings. Filed by Kellen himself. They thought they were clever planting weeds in my garden. What they did not know was that liens without authority rot on the vine. That screenshot was proof of intent, not success. I excused myself, walked to the terrace, and let the cool air settle my hands. Outside the city breathed its usual noise, taxis' laughter, a siren somewhere down Boylston Street. I pulled the phone out and read the message again, then saved it to my folder. Evidence never sleeps. Inside, the band struck a louder note. Guests were calling for the cake. I slipped the phone back into my jacket. On the way in, I passed the hotel office. Through the half-open door, I saw a printer spitting out contracts with my name. Ria's handwriting on sticky flags, Dad signs here. My initials written by someone else's pen. That was their stagecraft, their props. Mine was quieter. A notary's stamp, an LLC record, a conditional POA unsigned, and the patience to wait until the right moment. You see, a bookbinder learns early glue, dries when it is ready, not when you want it. If you rush, the spine cracks. So I waited. I let them laugh. I let them think I was cornered. I let them plan their midnight victory. But what they did not know was this. I had already moved the game 2 steps ahead. They were playing with wet paper. I had the only pages that would last. The band had just finished a long note, the kind that makes people cheer even when they are not listening. The planner waved for servers to clear plates. The ballroom lights softened. This was the moment they had prepared cake-cut signatures after. They thought my hand would tremble. They thought paper would finally fold. I stood. At my age, standing in front of a room means something. Chairs creaked, forks paused, heads turned. I laid my palm flat on the table before me. The envelope slid from my jacket onto the linen with a sound sharp as a gavel. Not raised, not waved, just placed. Silence spread like ink in water. Ladies and gentlemen, I said before the contracts come out, a small correction. The planner blinked. Kellen forced a smile. Ria's face tightened, but she held her glass like a prop. The guests leaned in, smelling scandal. I lifted the envelope, once tapped it against my palm, then nodded toward the side doors. They opened. In walked Mr. Pike, my lawyer, tall and neat in a gray suit, and beside him a notary with her black leather case. They did not belong at a wedding, and that was the point. Cormac Kellen said quickly, "This is not the time." "It is exactly the time," I answered. My voice was even. "I have learned that volume is a cheap trick. Calmness travels farther. You have all toasted a future. Allow me to record it properly." The notary set her case on the head table. A brass seal gleamed under the lights. The guests whispered. Someone raised a phone. The red dot blinked. I let them record. Truth loves a witness. Ria tried to laugh. "Dad, what is this?" She reached for the folder marked with my initials, the one she had planted earlier. I placed my hand over it before she could touch it. "That," I said, "is theater." "This," I tapped the envelope, "is record." Mr. Pike spoke, then voice crisp. "By authority vested in this notary and this codicil, Mr. Vale hereby executes an amendment to his estate plan. Effective immediately, all primary assets transfer into trust for the benefit of his grandchildren. Control of Vale Holdings remains with Mr. Vale." The notary pressed her seal. The snap echoed louder than the violinist's strings. Some guests gasped. Others lifted phones higher. Ria's smile cracked. Kellen flushed red, his jaw working for words that would not come. I held up a hand. "Before dessert, one more note." I looked to the hotel manager who had been standing nervously at the door. "Freeze the escrow on tonight's event. $120,000. Hold it until the matter of unauthorized signatures is reviewed." The manager nodded, relieved to have instructions. He hurried off phone, already to his ear. A murmur rolled through the room. Servers stopped mid-step. The band faltered, then went quiet. Kellen slammed his glass down. "You cannot do this. We already signed the venue agreements." "You attempted," I corrected. "With a power of attorney that was conditional, never active. With deeds that hold no ink of mine, paper remembers." I touched the envelope again, light final. Ria's voice broke then. "Dad, please. You are humiliating us." "No," I said. "You did that yourselves when you tried to stage my silence." The room was still. Only the phones clicked, catching every angle. I let the pause stretch until it felt like stone. Then I leaned on the table, steady as a lectern. Family that steals in daylight should expect the record to answer at night. I sat back down. The notary closed her case. Mr. Pike folded the codicil into a binder and placed it before me. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A few slipped toward the exits. The wedding had become something else. Something final. But what they did not know was this: the county clerk's search already showed Kellen's false lien, and I had that screenshot in my folder waiting for the next reveal. You could feel the air split in that ballroom. Not from music, not from laughter, but from truth, landing heavy. Some guests were already slipping their phones back into purses, embarrassed to be caught watching. Others leaned in hungry for the spectacle. I stayed seated. A man my age does not need to pace. Gravity does the walking for him. Mr. Pike adjusted his glasses, then held up a second folder. For those of you confused, he said, allow me to clarify. Any quitclaim deed prepared in Ria's name is invalid. The conditional power of attorney was never triggered since Mr. Vale's capacity remains intact. His tone was calm, almost bored the way you talk when you are certain of your footing. That tone does more damage than a shout. Kellen shot up from his chair. This is outrageous. We consulted professionals. We filed properly. The house is ours. I motioned toward the projector screen by the bandstand. The hotel staff had wheeled it out earlier for a slideshow of childhood photos. I had prepared something different. With a nod to the manager, the screen flickered. A county clerk search page filled the room, the blue and white seal plain as day. There, it was a lien attempt filed in Kellen's name lodged against Vale Holdings. Date stamped 2 weeks before. Denied for lack of authority. The word rejected stamped in red. Gasps scattered across the tables. Someone whispered, "Did you see that phones rose again? Proof travels faster than rumor when you let it." Kellen's face drained, then flushed. "That is not what it looks like," he stammered. I answered without raising my voice. "It looks like theft, dressed as ambition, and it looks like rejection, dressed as justice." Ria tried to intervene. "Dad, stop this. You are tearing our family apart." "No," I said. "You did that when you traded trust for paper." Then the next shock arrived without my hand. A phone buzzed on the head table. Ria's bridesmaid had left it unlocked. On the screen, a group chat lit up. Someone had forwarded a screenshot, Ria bragging, "Tonight it's done. Dad won't even notice. 2.7 million and counting." Her friends replied with champagne emojis. Someone in the crowd snickered. Someone else snapped a photo of the screen before it dimmed. The rumor had legs now. The violinist, unsure whether to play, tightened his bow. The planner whispered to her staff. The cake stood untouched, towering, ridiculous. I sipped my water. Silence can be louder than any scolding. Ria's voice cracked, desperate now. "This is private. You cannot just—" Private Eye cut in, still calm. "You turned my house into a bargaining chip on a group chat. You left your fingerprints in escrow drafts. You signed your own witness list. Do not call it private when you broadcast it for applause." The guests shifted. Some pitied her, some enjoyed the fall. Most simply wanted to be anywhere else. That is the way of witnesses. They crave drama, then recoil from the mess. Kellen tried one last card. "The escrow funds, those are ours. You cannot freeze them." I leaned back. I already did. I did not need to explain further. The hotel manager had confirmed it minutes earlier. $120,000 locked until review. The checkbook they thought was open had snapped shut in public. A murmur rose, half shock, half approval. I let it roll. Then I placed my hands flat, one on the envelope, one on the binder, and looked at the notary. "Mark it complete," I said. Her seal thumped again, final. The ballroom smelled of wax, sugar, and panic. Ria sat pale now, whispering to herself. Kellen paced, muttering numbers that no longer mattered. I remained still. Age teaches you do not have to chase chaos. You only have to outlast it. But what they did not know was this. The Ring camera back at my townhouse had caught Kellen himself rummaging through my drawers the week before. That video was waiting patient like paper for its turn to speak. The ballroom had grown brittle. Forks, untouched music, stilled whispers rising like gnats. Ria sat frozen. Kellen stalked the floor, words spilling out but never forming sense. I rested my palms on the binder. Patience carried me here. Patience would finish it. Mr. Pike cleared his throat. "One last matter." He lifted a small device no bigger than a phone. "Mr. Vale asked me to prepare a file." He tapped and the projector screen flickered again. Not a contract this time, not a clerk record, but a video. The timestamp was last Thursday night. My hallway. The Ring camera's eye caught Kellen glancing over his shoulder, then pulling open the drawer where I keep deeds and family photographs. He rifled through, pocketed a folder, and slipped out. The room gasped. Someone muttered, "That's breaking and entering." Kellen lunged forward. "That's taken out of context." "There is no context," I said. My voice held even. "Paper remembers. So do cameras." Rhea buried her face in her hands. She knew. Everyone knew. The spectacle was not a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. I rose once more. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, I apologize for the interruption to your evening. But theft is not a toast. It is not a vow. It is a record, and records must be answered. I held up a second envelope thinner. Here is my instruction. The townhouse is listed for sale under Vale Holdings. The proceeds, $2.7 million by current appraisal, will enter a trust managed by an independent trustee. My grandchildren will know security. My daughter will know patience. Rhea whispered, Dad, please don't cut me out. I am not cutting you out, I answered. I am teaching you the weight of paper. Trust is earned. Trust is not stolen. The notary stepped forward. I signed slow and steady, my hand sure. The stamp pressed again, final as thunder. The trust was live. Then, for the first time that night, I allowed myself a small act of theater. From my jacket, I withdrew a smart lock card, the one that still gave Rhea access to my townhouse. I held it up, then slid it across the table to the hotel manager. Deactivate it, I said. Effective now. The room exhaled. Even the band understood. Access revoked in front of everyone. Kellen spat. You can't just erase us. I did not erase you, I said softly. You erased yourselves when you signed my name without my hand. Phones caught every word. I did not mind. Truth is not shy. The guests began to stand, coats gathered, whispers swelling. The wedding had ended, though no announcement was made. Only the cake remained towering and untouched, a monument to a promise already broken. I leaned back in my chair, steady as a bookend. A family that steals, I said, has no home here. Silence followed, deep and final. My work was done. But what they did not know was this: the escrow freeze would ripple beyond the ballroom. Bank alerts would flag community, whispers would spread, and even the HOA, small as they seemed, would fine them for the noise of their own collapse. By the time I stepped out of that ballroom, the night air carried more weight than any toast. Boston's Back Bay glowed as it always did, lanterns on the street, taxis huffing at the curb. But inside that hotel, my daughter's new life had cracked before the ink dried. I did not need to raise my voice. The records spoke. The witnesses carried it with them, tucked into their phones like souvenirs. The first ripple came the next morning. The Homeowners Association emailed me a notice, another fine. This one not for noise, but for inappropriate gatherings leading to community disruption. $300 again. I printed it, placed it in the drawer with the others, and smiled. Paper was building its case without me lifting a hand. By afternoon, the video of me freezing the escrow had already traveled across social media. A guest nephew had posted it with the caption, "When the father of the bride turns the wedding into a courtroom." Thousands of views, comments piling on. Some called me cruel, some called me brave. Most simply tagged their friends and wrote family drama goals. You cannot choose how the crowd names you. You can only let them speak. Neighbors texted too. One wrote, "Cormac, I saw the clip. You were steady as stone." Another said, "Back Bay has never seen a reception like that. Gossip is quick, but it rarely needs correction when the truth is plain." The truth was stamped in brass on my codicil in bold red on the county clerk's page in grainy footage from my Ring camera. Paper record image, they travel faster than denial. Rhea and Kellen went quiet for a day. Then the messages came. Long texts about betrayal, about embarrassment, about how I had ruined their start. I read them once, saved them, and did not reply. Silence is its own language. You learn that at 69 when arguments no longer deserve your pulse. By the end of the week, Rhea stopped showing her face in the neighborhood. The cafe down the street whispered about her. The florist who had supplied those $17,800 worth of roses told me she had already asked for a refund she would never receive. Even the hotel staff muttered about unpaid tips, about how the escrow freeze left their invoices hanging. $120,000 locked tight, waiting on a judge's nod. They would not forget. Kellen tried to posture. He filed a complaint, sent letters with large headings. Mr. Pike read them over coffee and chuckled. "Bluster," he said. "No ink behind it. Paper only matters if it's valid." His was not. And then came the quietest ripple of all. My grandchildren, Rhea's children, sent me a drawing. A house with windows, smoke rising from the chimney, and stick figures standing outside. They wrote my name at the door. They did not understand the escrow, the LLC, the codicil. They only understood safety. That was enough. Neighbors asked if I regretted making it public, humiliating them in front of so many. I told them no. Some truths must be spoken where they cannot be denied. Families that whisper their thefts in private will always call you cruel when you answer in public. That is their echo, not mine. I walked Commonwealth Avenue that weekend past brownstones older than my father's war stories and felt the weight slide off. I had not raised a fist. I had only pressed a seal, signed my hand, and spoken calm. Silent power. Sometimes the only defense left. But what they did not know was this: the townhouse was already under contract. The trust account already waiting. $2.7 million ready to shift hands. The final chapter was not in gossip or fines, it was in closing papers no rumor could erase. Months later, the townhouse stood bare. The movers had carried out the last chair, the last box of books, the last frame of my wife's smile. I walked through each floor one final time, touching walls that had heard both laughter and silence. The sale closed without fuss. $2.7 million wired clean into the trust account beyond reach of schemes or signatures not my own. I signed the papers in Mr. Pike's office. His desk was orderly, oak-polished pens lined straight. The notary pressed her stamp one last time. That sound had become my hymn. Each seal, a reminder paper when used properly, is armor. The money moved into a structure I had built not for myself but for the grandchildren who still saw me as a door to safety, not a vault to raid. They would grow under its shade, never knowing the weeds their parents had tried to plant. Rhea never came to the closing. Kellen sent one more letter, long and swollen with threats, but even he must have known it was hollow. He stopped after that. Gossip kept its rhythm in Back Bay for a while, neighbors nodding, whispers in cafes, posts online still circulating of the night I froze the escrow in public. Eventually, the noise softened. Families always find new stories to chew. I let them. My work was done. Life grew quieter. I rented a small flat overlooking the river, 2 rooms, enough shelves for the books I still mend with careful fingers. In the mornings I take long walks, nodding at strangers, carrying no more than a newspaper folded under my arm. No grand house, no banquet lights, no false applause. Just space and silence and the steady knowledge that the records hold. Sometimes when the grandchildren visit, they ask about the old place. I tell them stories, not of lawsuits, not of frozen escrows, not of liens denied, but of the narrow stair that creaked on the 3rd step of the window seat where their mother once read fairy tales of the garden that smelled of lilac in May. They smile. That is what they need. The rest is written elsewhere, safe sealed beyond tampering. At my age, you learn closure is not about triumph. It is about steadiness, about knowing you chose the slow hand over the loud one. People expected rage. I gave them record. They wanted a scene. I gave them silence with weight. In the end, I did not lose a house. I gained the truth. So here I am telling you this across a table you cannot see. If you believe I made the right choice, comment right. If you have another way, a better way, share it. Families and money are a book always being bound. We each decide whether the spine will hold or split. And that is the last page of mine,